Welcome to the Mystic Fool's Journey podcast. I'm Anna, and this is Ruth.
Howdy.
And this is an occult history podcast. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Helena Blavatsky. Let's dive on in.
Let's do it up. Okay, cool. I'm super stoked to be talking about this lady. She's like kind of a crazy lady, and I always hear her name around like when we're researching stuff or like just looking into stuff, and I am excited to dive in a little bit more. Unfortunately, a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, it was a little disappointing. I feel like, this is another case of those like humans are nuanced and complex individuals. You've probably heard her name and you're like, she has important contributions to the occult history side of things. And she does. But sometimes it's a little disappointing what those contributions are.
Important contributions? I don't know. She does have contributions.
She definitely had some sort of sway on history and how things went. But,
definitely
doesn't necessarily mean it was good or like needed.
Right,
you know
exactly. So Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, also known as Madame Blavatsky, was this Russian and American mystic and writer. And back in 1875, she teamed up with a whole bunch of others to create the Theosophical Society. And people from all over the world were into her ideas and became like big shot theorists for Theosophy. And you might recognize that. We talked about Theosophy a couple of times in, I think, the Satanic Feminism episodes. But there's a lot of people that were like members of this society that actually did contribute a lot of cool things to like feminism and that sort of thing. A lot of cool like activists were in the society and didn't necessarily, go to such extremes as Helena did in life.
Yeah. She's wild.
She is wild,
as you'll see.
And so Theosophy is a set of spiritual beliefs and practices that aim to explore and understand the mysteries of existence, the nature of divinity, and the spiritual dimensions of life.
It just sounds like every spirituality. I was like, this sounds so generic.
Yeah, I also feel like it could be the intro for like an unexplained mysteries TV episode.
Yes, 100%. Notice that there's a lot of chain restaurants that are themed.
Right. Who's the guy? Robert Pratt is there.
Yes.
Yeah. So it covers a wide range of topics, including metaphysics, reincarnation, karma, and just in general the interconnectedness of all living beings. And Theosophy seeks to uncover like hidden truths about the universe and human existence through a combination of spiritual insight, philosophy, and the study of ancient religious and mystical traditions. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky did not invent Theosophy, but she did play a significant role in popularizing and shaping its modern form. Theosophy has roots in various like ancient philosophical and mystical traditions, including elements from Hinduism, Buddhism, and Western esotericism.
I find it interesting because I kind of like thought that she became kind of like a figurehead for them, but I found it interesting that she didn't necessarily invent it. But she did shape a lot of it.
Yeah, that was interesting to me too. I thought she did play a bigger role in like the actual like invention of this like social religion, I guess. But it really was just she was kind of the cheerleader for it to an extent.
Yeah, and then wrote like books and stuff that I think contributed to it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
she definitely wrote a lot of books that like kind of laid it out in more, layman's terms for people to read and go off of. But I'd like to read off this quote that was published in 1885 by the Cambridge-based Society for Psychical Research about their opinion of Madame Blavatsky to set the tone for our journey. Quote, "For our part, we regard her as neither the mouthpiece of hidden seers nor as a mere vulgar adventuress. We think that she has achieved a title to permanent remembrance as one of the most accomplished, ingenious, and interesting imposters in history."
That was a trip. That was
truly
ended on imposter. It definitely was one of the most flattering backhanded compliments I've ever heard.
Truly the sickest own.
Yeah, it's like, wow, like there were a lot of like really great adjectives and then you ended on imposter.
Mouthpiece of hidden seers is incredible. Mere
Yeah,
vulgar
exactly.
adventurous.
Vulgar.
Vulgar adventurous is something I'd like to have in my Instagram bio.
What would it take to be vulgar these days? I feel like the bar has risen so much that I feel
Truly.
like, like a woman just traveling was probably vulgar back then in the
I know, I think
1800s.
she like wore pants and that was kind of it.
Yeah. Yeah, like, oh my God.
Throughout her life, she claimed that she teamed up with Italian rebel Giuseppe Garibaldi, chased Native American magicians in Quebec, and the cherry on top, and even studied with mystics in far-off Tibet. So buckle up, it's about to get interesting, guys.
I feel like you can't be a mystic if you don't go to Tibet. This is
I mean,
you either gotta
truly.
go to India or Tibet, and like once you're there, it's like check, white person figuring out spirituality. Done.
Exactly. It's kind of like a qualifying experience.
Yes.
So Helena Petrovna Blavatsky had a pretty fancy start and was born into a super snazzy family in... Okay, here we go. Big words, folks.
I can't help you.
Yekater Enoslav, which is now Dnipro in Ukraine. I'm so sorry.
Feel like there's got to be a silent N.
Yeah.
Just like it's spelled Dnipro, and I'm like, maybe it's Dimpro, or I don't know.
Dnipro, that sounds good. Yeah.
We'll go with that.
So back when it was a part of the Russian Empire, so way back in the day, and she was actually the granddaughter of a princess.
Classic start.
Classic. So her great-grandpa, Prince Pavel, we're just gonna go with Prince Pavel here.
Yeah,
there's
we'll
a
go with
couple
that
of
one.
more big words. I don't want to offend anybody else that I already have. So Prince Pavel was a big shot during Catherine the Great's time. And dude was not like just any major general. He was also deep into the mystical and Freemason scene. So Freemasons, shout it out, take a shot.
Classic.
He rolled with the rite of strict observance in Russia, a crew all about following these mysterious unknown superiors who supposedly ran the show in the 18th century.
Always fun. I feel like every group also, bingo for spiritualism of some kind, has to have either ascended masters, unknown masters, like veiled ones. Like
Yes. There's hidden secrets and also hidden people in charge of those hidden secrets that only certain people can talk to.
Yes. We've seen this before when we went through like the whole Aleister Crowley and Golden Dawn situation.
Yeah, exactly. So guess where Helena grew up? Yep, in her great-grandpa's house. And where'd she spend all of her free time, you might ask? In his library, diving into hundreds of books on alchemy, magic, and all things occult. And by the time she hit 15, she was like breezing through these texts by Paracelsus and Conrad and C. Agrippa, thinking, yeah, not left for, anybody else in the world to teach me. I'm pretty good to go from here.
Jeez. She understood them too? Like,
apparently.
That's my next question.
So this library was like a treasure trove of esoteric knowledge. Mythology, Gnosticism, Rosicrucianism, astrology, you name it. And Helena even stumbled upon a manuscript about the mysterious Court of Saint Germain, adding more fuel to her fascination with hidden adepts steering the occult ship.
I think it's Count of Saint Germain.
Oh, what did I say?
Court.
Court. Oh, darn it. It was the Count.
I just don't want people Googling the wrong thing.
I know,
so I had to look this guy up, and because I didn't know much about him, and I was like, oh, it sounds important if she read about him, I guess. And I see why learning about him probably like inspired Blavatsky to embellish her own exploits, as we'll see. So in general, he's kind of a mysterious dude. People even now don't know all the facts about Count of Saint Germain. So he's got a bunch of legends surrounding him and has kind of become like a legendary figure within Theosophy and spiritualism in general. But not much we can prove aside from a few things. So we do know he was a composer, a violinist, a chemist, and, of course, an alchemist, known as the man that never dies.
Oh,
because,
nice.
So supposedly he made like an immortality elixir that could keep him young. But one of the first records we have of him just existing is of his arrest in 1743 as a suspected spy. But he was released without charges, so he got off. Then he disappears, and he suddenly reappears 10 years later in France. And he gets in really good with the royal family, King Louis XV, and becomes a regular at Versailles. Like, he was just like a charmer. He was like composing music and performing for them. And apparently he was kind of a ladies' man too.
Oh.
Yeah, and he was multilingual. He like was known as like the guy who always knew things. Like, he just had all these like rumors surrounding him. And every time someone saw him, he never looked like he aged. So that like added to this like idea that he was immortal. So during the 7 Years' War, this is another weird thing that surrounds him. He apparently tried to broker peace between Britain and France.
As one does.
As one casually tries to do. And then he was accused of being a spy again, but he got off, and because like King Louis really liked him, like he was BFFs with the king and his consorts. And so after that, he popped up in multiple places around Europe, among other different names. Like, he had a bunch of pseudonyms. And once again, people swear that he didn't age, so there started to be this rumor that he was around 100 years old. And he never confirmed or denied any of these rumors, so he just kind of like let them happen, which added to the mystique. We do have 2 books that are attributed to him. Once again, we don't know if he actually wrote them. And of course, this is probably maybe something that Helena ran across eventually, because one of these books details an initiation that references alchemy, Masonic, and Kabbalistic mysteries, and the other, which is in the shape of a triangle, is written in code, and it has 2 rituals in it, one of which is supposedly a way to extend life.
Whoa!
So this dude has like not enough, like, this is like definitely like a time when things were like super loosey-goosey when it came to record keeping. Apparently on his deathbed, and this is the thing, people who believe he's immortal think that he faked his death.
Nice.
But according to history, he like caught like influenza or consumption, something along those lines. And he told one of his buddies that he was supposedly a deposed Transylvanian prince, which would explain why he has money. But no one could ever really figure out or prove where he actually came from. So in the short term, like in this whole story, if Helena was reading these wild stories about this man who could live forever and was an alchemist, I can definitely see how she took some notes from his legends and how he definitely embellished a few things and just let people think whatever wild things they wanted to about him, because she kind of goes on to do the same. So Count Saint Germain might have inspired Madame Blavatsky just to be like who she is.
You think, because he was also, you said, a chemist, you think he just like happened upon like the early version of retinol?
He might have been like, if I smear this weird plant thing that I've, concocted, that wouldn't surprise me. You're either going to die or discover something being a chemist back in these days. So
that's actually a solid point.
it's one of those two.
That's hilarious. What a cool guy. So here's where things get spicy. Her great-grandpa's ties to like these unknown superiors sparked her imagination. Who were these master adepts chasing the perfection of humanity? Where were they hiding? What secrets were they holding? All questions that we are trying to answer with this podcast.
All of them. I don't think we found them, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. These questions lit a fire under her, making her spend her whole life on the hunt for the masters of ancient wisdom. And you know what? Her great-grandpa's Freemasonry connections might have been her first breadcrumb in this quest, as you said, with Count Saint Germain. So in 1849, she apparently decided to spice things up and went on a world tour, hitting up Europe, the Americas, and India. According to her story, she had some wild encounters during this time. She claimed to run into a crew of spiritual pros, the masters of the ancient wisdom, who sent her packing to Tibet. And there they supposedly gave her the lowdown on religion, philosophy, and science, like the ultimate crash course. It's just like so funny to me how many parallels there are between her life and Aleister Crowley's. Just a couple of rich kids doing whatever the heck they want in life.
Yeah, I feel like that feels like it's a common thread for humanity as a whole. I feel like we can point to a lot of people nowadays that are kind of like that too. So like when you don't have to live in like survival mindset because all your basic needs are taken care of, you're kind of free to like do whatever. And if you have excess money on top of that, then you're just like, well, I got to go find my purpose and I got to figure this out. And it feels like we always have this like very insatiable need as humans to like know what we don't know yet. So of course they're like going after, spiritual things, divine masters. When you're saying that, it made me think of like the Star Trek universe, or my personal favorite is the Orville, which is like a successor to Star Trek. And in those societies, because science is so advanced, they've moved beyond capitalism and everyone's needs are met. So currency, money as currency isn't needed. And currency becomes like being a respectable person and a craftsman. And the example they gave in the episode was like, you can be a barista and that's perfectly honorable, or you can go travel space. And like in my head, if Crowley and Blavatsky had been born, like centuries later into a Star Trek-like universe, they'd probably be the ones on the spaceship looking for like undiscovered life and trying to figure out the secrets of the universe.
That's true. Picard came from a rich family.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So like if they had just been born in different circumstances with maybe a more loving family, they would have made different types of discoveries along the way. But to flip back to that whole like seeking out ascended masters, Count Saint Germain is thought to be an ascended master in Theosophy, and several Theosophists have claimed to have seen him both in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Really? That's very interesting.
Yeah, I think the whole like legend of him being immortal and like Blavatsky stumbling upon him and knowing about his works, like those books that supposedly have, life-extending rituals, I think that kind of added fuel to the fire. And there were a few places I saw that some of the Theosophical members claimed that she could like communicate with him and like learned things from him and pass them down. So he is kind of a legend in that area of spiritualism, it seems like.
Hey, I want to believe,
Right. I know. That's why we're here. We're really just the Mulders and Scullys of the world trying to
Truly.
figure it out. Yeah, I want to believe.
Spooky Anna and Ruth.
We're going to figure it out.
So people back in the day and later biographers have been throwing shade, saying Helena Petrovna Blavatsky might have been making up tales about her globe-trotting adventures. Nearly everyone agrees at this point that most of her adventures actually didn't happen. They think she might have just been chilling in Europe during that time.
Yikes! Yes, here we go with the disappointing parts.
Yes,
but not surprising, as we learned with Count Saint Germain and stuff. Like record keeping was super loosey goosey back then. Like people weren't as strict about passports and stuff. I think it's been made clear through this entire podcast that lying could really get you places back when digital documentation didn't exist.
Truly, they had it good, man.
Yeah, you could just say stuff. I mean, like, honestly, it was terrible because if you had no ethics, it caused problems. But...
Right. But, ethics, here nor there.
Can you imagine the possibilities?
Truly.
Say I did stuff and was a deposed prince of Transylvania?
Right, exactly. But Blavatsky was on a mission after leaving Tibet. She wanted to show the world that all the crazy stuff the spiritualists were talking about was legit and not just a bunch of hocus pocus. But here's the twist. She didn't buy into the whole, talking to the spirits of the dead deal that the spiritualist crew was pushing. According to her, it was more like dealing with mischievous elementals or, leftover shells from the departed. She didn't believe in, the whole, talking to the dead. She thought they were other beings that they were talking to.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a nice little twist.
It is a twist. So she hopped on a boat through the Suez Canal to Greece, where she had to meet up with another big shot, Master Hilarion, and then she set sail for Europe through the SS Eunomia, and things got wild when the ship exploded.
My God.
And crazy enough, Blavatsky was just one of 16 survivors. Isn't that kind of crazy?
That's nuts. That would be life-changing.
It truly would. And once she hit Cairo, she teamed up with a guy named Medamon and a lady named Emma Cutting to start a spooky club, kind of like Spiritism, which is different than spiritualism. It's like a more reincarnation-loving flavor of spiritualism that this guy, Alan Kardec, found. So that's kind of the difference. It's Spiritism she's into, not spiritualism.
I have one marketing tweak here, is that they need to name it something that's not as close to spiritualism. Because at this point, if you said that in conversation, I'd be like, they're the same. Spiritism. and
Yeah,
spiritualism.
I know. Yeah, they're just like it's not good, man. We got notes.
It's the off-brand. It's like when you get the off-brand Dr. Pibb instead of Dr. Pepper. It's like,
Yeah, that's why it's always good to have a friend in marketing.
definitely. That's why we're here.
Right. Friendly neighborhood marketers. But here's the kicker. Blavatsky smelled something fishy with Cutting and a bunch of the other mediums in the club. So she shut it down after just 2 weeks, calling them out for being fraudulent. So talk about calling the kettle black or whatever the saying is. I don't really know.
The pot calling the kettle black.
Oh, is that what it is? Cool.
That is what it is. Yeah.
You know,
I
black
dig
cats or whatever. I figured,
Yeah,
whatever.
it's all the same.
It is all the same. But in 1873, she jets off to the United States and befriends Henry Steele Alcott. And suddenly she's in the spotlight as like kind of a spirit medium. Kind of sus, honestly. But with the fame comes drama, and folks started accusing her of pulling some tricks.
Ruh-roh.
Ruh-roh
Here it
indeed.
comes.
Here we go. All right, so in 1875, right smack in the middle of New York City, Blavatsky teamed up with Alcott and William Quan Judge to kick off the Theosophical Society.
Okay, sick.
Yep, so here we are. Forget the regular ghosts. Blavatsky wasn't settling for the basic spooky stuff. If you flash back to 1875, she was hanging out in some swanky Manhattan spot, and she kicks off a crew that forms the Theosophical Society. And there's no more ghost hunts now. They're on the lookout for some like super top tier supernatural beings called the Mahatmas that Blavatsky claimed to have met in Tibet.
Yeah, I see she decided to appropriate a word from India as well. Like,
Yes.
Mahatma is just an honorific title. Like, you've heard the name Mahatma Gandhi. Like, Mahatma is
yeah.
a title. It's not like his first name, but it's given to like very wise and respected folks. And it sounds like she just decided that was a dope word for these supernatural beings.
Yeah, that's something we see a lot
Classic.
in these stories.
Yeah, we do.
So these dudes, as she tells it like it is she says that they were like the VIPs of the supernatural world. Picture this, they could teleport their souls anywhere on the planet in a snap through something called astral projection.
Here we go.
I know,
Okay.
this is a word we're familiar with. And get this, they weren't just like soul travelers. No, they were actually pulling off some like wild Amazon Prime level deliveries. Sending letters flying through train windows or dropping them off in tents at midnight. And Theosophists were losing their mind over these letters, like magically showing up. Back in the 1870s, getting a message instantly felt like pulling off straight magic tricks.
I feel like this is going to take a turn at some point.
Yeah, I know. It just feels a little too Harry Potter.
No, also, knowing at the beginning of the episode, we called her an imposter. So,
Right.
Where is it? When's the shoe going to drop?
So at some point, our wannabe miracle worker realizes she needs some backup because sometimes friends can be flaky. So enter Emma Cologne, an old pal from Cairo. And when Blavatsky decided to shift her tiny Theosophist crew from New York to Bombay in 1879, and then later they went to another place in 1880, Emma and her husband Pierre tagged along as Blavatsky's personal assistants.
Oh, how nice.
It's so nice. You know, Anna, I'm just waiting for you to volunteer up as my personal assistant.
It's time, Ruth. I'll be your personal assistant. What's my pay?
Right, none. So
We'll work it out.
We'll work it out. Now, things get kicked off on the wrong foot. Cologne wasn't the friendliest and wasn't vibing with the other Theosophists. And on the flip side, Blavatsky, who was known for her grumpy side, didn't always play nice with her pals. I just feel like if you're gonna be a fraudster, you gotta be a nice person.
Yeah, you gotta be a charmer. Like, you have to be someone. If you want this to be successful, you can't be grumpy. You can't
Exactly.
be known to be. This seems to be like a constant, like, even with Aleister Crowley, it's like, it feels like a lot of these people are just, like, so into what they believe that they will sacrifice followers for it, and then it all fails. Like, it just feels like they set up their own traps for
It's
themselves.
so true. And so we're not sure what exactly triggered Colombe's betrayal, but in September 1884, she hands over a bunch of secret letters to Madras Christian College magazine. And that move spelled big trouble for Blavatsky and the gang. The magazine spilled the beans on these letters supposedly written by Blavatsky, giving Emma and Pierre the lowdown on how to fake miracles, making letters pop out of nowhere, raining roses from the ceiling, and floating astral heads in the evening breeze.
See, there it is. That is some classic revenge. Like, you cannot be a dick if you're gonna run this show.
No.
You can't do it. And this, like, solidly reminds me of a scene from Mean Girls where Regina makes copies of the burn book, which is a bunch of pages that have, like, gossip about different students written on them. And she, like, photocopies them and spreads them around the school.
Yes, exactly.
It's nice to know that that trope is, you know, solidly proven with historical evidence.
It's true.
It really feels like that is a thing people just constantly did when they were mad about stuff.
It is. So looking back, the miracle mechanics seem pretty obvious. One time, some bumbling theosophist accidentally opened Blavatsky's occult room wonder cabinet, and a tea saucer tumbled out and shattered. But here's the kicker: after a quick timeout back in the cabinet, it magically pieced itself back together. And later, investigators uncovered the tea saucer drama and found out the cabinet shared a wall with Blavatsky's bedroom. And they even dug up proof of a secret panel that was then gone, connecting the two. Turns out Blavatsky had recently bought a new tea set, so swapping out the broken saucer for a fresh one was a piece of cake.
Yikes. Yep. See, when stuff like this comes up, I wonder how the Theosophical Society just managed to keep going. You're like, come on. What else is she lying about if she's also, like, doing all these elaborate tricks? Like, it sets off a bunch of red flags for me that I'd be like, okay, we need to stop following this chick. That's
what I'm saying, too. And, like, were these people just, like, a bunch of dummies, you think?
Well, I feel like it might be, like, in short, yes. But, like, from the empathetic side of things, they were probably, like, humans who were lost and looking for something to believe in. And that is the unfortunate way to capitalize on human emotion, is being like, oh, you're impoverished. Oh, you have tough things going on in your life. Well, I've got the answer for you, because they want one and they need one. And so it's like, oh, it's just very exploitative.
Yeah, and it's so easy to judge from our modern standpoint.
Yeah. We're looking back.
Yeah, it's true. We got telephones, like iPhones now. These people didn't. I understand.
They did not.
I probably would have fallen for this, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I guarantee I probably would have been in one of those communes, probably in the 70s or something.
Yes. And we would have enjoyed it. That's for sure.
It would have been fun. We would have been great at it.
So back in the 1880s, diving into stuff like this was a big deal. With all this new science shaking up how people thought the world worked, smart cookies wanted to check if folks like Blavatsky were onto something. Maybe spirits were real, or maybe they were just, like, pointing out some weird psychical stuff that, like, science hadn't figured out yet. But you guessed it, the Cambridge Society of Psychical Research wasn't buying it, and they did some digging and dropped the bomb. Blavatsky was just a plain old fraud. Her rep took a hit, but she still had this magnetic pull, drawing in followers for years to come. Despite being a proven fraud, she did have some legitimate contributions to the world of the esoteric. I mean, legitimate, I don't know, but I think we said in the beginning, she had contributions to the world of the esoteric.
She definitely contributed. She definitely, like, figured out how to make a new religion, for sure.
Yeah. If anything, she gave a lot of credence to the whole idea of creating your own religion.
Yeah, she's like, it's possible. You can definitely do it. And yeah, I guess whenever I see stuff like this, I always think, like, is this what this person, like, would want people to be saying about them in history? Like, what was their goal? Like, we know with Aleister Crowley, he started to embrace the whole, like, any attention that was given to him. He liked to lean into the whole, like, I'm spooky and weird and wacky and I dabble in dark arts. Like, he embraced that. Like, he actively embraced that and was fine with it, because that's how he got his validation. But, you're looking at, like, Madame Blavatsky and you're like, did she want something more for herself? Like, when she was doing all of this, like, what did she want people to genuinely think and say about her? Or was she just trying to, like, last through history, which she has done? If that was her goal, like, she has done that.
I know, that really is the question to be asked, like, especially as, like, somebody that has money. Like, at the end of her life, she could have, given her fortune away to some worthy cause of the time. and really, at least had some redeeming factor of this. But it really seems like Blavatsky was not about redeeming her life at all. I suppose maybe she was just down to like live in the moment and, say crazy stuff and make a crazy, religion sort of thing out of it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, like, did she even, like, believe at any point in time in any of the things that she was seeking? I guess is
That's
also, like, the weird one.
Yeah, it is crazy. So a few years later, she dropped a book, Isis Unveiled, and that book spilled the beans on the whole theosophical vibe. She was all about blending science, religion, and philosophy, calling it the ultimate ancient wisdom that sneaks into, like, every religion out there. And in 1880, Blavatsky and Alcott set sail for India, and while chilling over there that same year, they made history by being the first Americans to officially hop on the Buddhism train, which was interesting.
That's cool. I didn't know we kept track of that.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was like a process. Like, oh, we found it. We are going to keep record of this now. Like, oh.
Right. At least, they had already probably documented it as...
Yeah.
There might have been others, but at least they had documentation of it.
Yeah.
So things got a bit spicy in India for a lot of different reasons. The British colonial crew wasn't like too thrilled with Theosophy's popularity, which we always forget that that's going on at the same time here. And accusations of Blavatsky faking paranormal stuff didn't like help it either. And with her health taking a hit, she had jetted back to Europe in 1885, setting up shop with the Blavatsky Lodge in London.
There it is. We just got to retire and form a bed and breakfast.
Right, exactly. There she dropped The Secret Doctrine, a book that spilled the tea on what she claimed were ancient Tibetan texts, and threw in 2 more books, The Key to Theosophy and The Voice of the Silence. Unfortunately, she caught the flu and checked out in 1891.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, based off of her history of lying, and say that her writings probably had nothing to do with ancient Tibetan texts. And she was doing that thing where she wanted to give credence to her own writings the same way we talked about how people like would change their names to something that was more Indian sounding. So that way people thought it was authentic. And I also say this because I did not read the book wholly, but I looked into some of the things that are in The Secret Doctrine. And she proposes some wild stuff. One of them is root races, which are stages of human evolution according to her. And they do become just as racist as they sound. So Blavatsky thought that there were 7 stages to human evolution. And she thought that we were currently in the 5th stage. So the first race was Polarian, the second Hyperborean, the third Lemurian, which I'm sure some people have heard that term before, the 4th Atlantean, and buckle up, the 5th and supposedly current race that we're in is the Aryan.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's real rough. Now, she doesn't directly, she doesn't say anything that looks like, oh, white people are the next race, next evolution, but obviously that name is a little dicey. She still makes weird connections between intellectual abilities and people's ability to have ascended spiritual attributes. So it's a weird sort of spiritual racism that's happening in this book.
What an odd take to have.
It's such an odd take. And according to a member of the Theosophical Society whose name is C.W. Leadbeater or Leadbetter, I'm not quite sure the pronunciation on that, he thinks that the 6th and next root race is supposedly going to come from a colony that'll be established in Baja California, where they will do highly intensive eugenics. So, big fucking yikes, boys.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say, nah.
Nah, bro. I'm good. I feel like we have talked about this in extent, and we need to avoid anything like this.
Yeah, that's the thing. I really was looking forward to researching her because we see her name pop up all over the place and find out, what was the redeeming factor of Helena Blavatsky's life. Aleister Crowley was obviously a terrible person. We know that now. But he made, a pretty sick tarot deck, And
he made
that
a sick
sort
tarot
of thing.
deck. Yeah, and he did have, minus the, way his, religion Thelema evolved. Like, it started out pretty okay. You know, it
Yeah.
was like basic things like, hey, you need to respect other people's free will. And if we all end up respecting each other, basically you will achieve your highest purpose. Like, you know, nothing we do as humans should negate another person's, including animals, like ability to live their lives. And I'm like, those are some pretty progressive views for that time.
So while alive, Blavatsky had fans calling her a wise guru and haters calling her a fraud. But her theosophical ideas left a mark. And spreading Hindu and Buddhist vibes in the West was definitely something she did. And she shaped a lot of esoteric movements like Ariosophy, Anthroposophy, and the New Age movement. So, if anything, quite the journey, right?
Yep, definitely quite the journey. The only way to end that. I don't really know what else to say about
Quite
it.
the journey. So don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. If you're a fan of the podcast, we need you to do this so we can find new fans. And so tell your friends, follow us on all socials. Our handles are Sweet Death Inc. and Mystic Full Tarot on all platforms. See you later!